So they were previously on trial on charges of abetment to treason felony and treason felony, which carried a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. The Attorney General has, however, discontinued that case and brought them back to court, this time charged with high treason. I'm referring to the 10 persons alleged to have plotted to destabilize the country. Two of them, ACP Dr. Agordzo and Colonel Samuel Gamali, were each granted bail in a sum of 1 million Ghana cedis with two sureties, with one to be justified. The two have been charged with abetment of high treason. This case is before a 3-member panel of the Accra High Court, presided over by Justice Efiasewa Asari Buche. We want to have a conversation on the back of this. This is the highest charge that you can have slapped on a person. We've come from somewhere, so let's get a bit of background and let's tell you exactly where we're heading. My guest joining me for a conversation is Albert Yalyang. He's a national coordinator of WANEP, that's the West African Network for Peace Security. Okay. Hamdiya Mohammed is a lawyer, and our court correspondent Joseph Akablade, all joining us via Zoom. Good morning to you, all of you. I see you all.
Good morning, Mama.
Yeah, hi. Good morning. Joseph, I want you to start with us because I talked about the previous charges against these persons, which has changed. So give us a bit of background. When did this all start? The earlier charges, and how well did that travel?
And so, I mean, it started in the late 2020 when they were arrested, the individuals were arrested. You recall Dr. Makram, who is the medical director at the Citadel Hospital, was one of the first persons to be picked up. Later, some soldiers were arrested, and eventually we got news of the fact that ACP Benjamin Agordzo has also been picked up. And so that is how it started. And if you recall, at that time, the conversation on social media was that this was not a matter that was serious. Others described it as coup, eventual coup, among others. And eventually the state took them to the court and charged them, started at the district court, where they were charged with offenses that included treason, felony. There was also a bit about possessions of arms and ammunition without the necessary authorization. And so they were moved from the district court to the high court, where the trial proper was supposed to take place. It was supposed to be a trial by jury, and quite recently they had the jury being empaneled. Once that was done with, they actually it's provided a way for the case to commence. And so that particular case, as I speak to you today, is still pending at the high court. And the Attorney General did indicate, Godfrey Adame indicated in court that he has filed a nolle prosequi to discontinue that case. In terms of that particular matter, the court adjourned proceedings to the 4th of May. And so he made a point that the legal effect of the Attorney General entering a nolle prosequi is that the court does not have an option but just to grant the request to have the case discontinued. That is the treason felony one. And so that would be done on the 4th of May. And so by way of difference, whereas that case you had a judge, Justice Samuel Esied, who was hearing that matter together with jurors who were hearing the matter. In this particular instance, you have 3 high court judges who have been empaneled to hear the matter. And the charges, like you did indicate, are different in that we have high treason, conspiracy to commit high treason, and abetment of high treason being the charges against these individuals. And the facts of the case, according to the state, is that it picked up information that these are individuals who were engaged in a plot geared at overthrowing government. And so they mounted surveillance on them, and the surveillance did lead them to discover that they belonged to a group that they call the Take Action Ghana Group, which intended, it says its unofficial agenda was to engage in a series of demonstrations geared at toppling government. The AG says discussions were had about the possibility of capturing key state actors, including the president, and discussions about whether or not to kill him or not. They were said to have been manufacturing IEDs, guns, ammunition, among others, which were said to have been tested at the Teshi military range. And so when they are arrested, and they proceeded to the Citadel Hospital to search the place. They said they retrieved some of those items which have been attached. They claim they've also confiscated speeches that were to be read by them once they were successful, aside from drawings of key security installations, among others. But I mean, all these individuals, including ACP Agordzo and Colonel Samuel Kojo Gamele, a senior military officer, pleaded not guilty to the charges leveled against them, and they've all been granted bail. And so that is where we've come from, and where we are currently is that the case has been adjourned to sometime in 24th or 25th of May for the case management conference for this particular trial. And the presiding judge is Justice Ifya Saribuke, who is joined by two of her colleagues to get this particular matter.
Joseph, do you know if they were able to meet the bail conditions?
As at the time that we left the courtroom on Saturday, they were working on meeting those conditions, and it had not been met as at that time. So I'm sure Hamdia can give us an update on that. But it is important to know that you recall sometime in 2017 when Chief Justice Sophia Kufu was retiring, she delivered a judgment that indicated that 48 hours means 48 hours. And so when an accused person is arrested and it affects the liberty, courts have to be available on Saturdays to hear such matters. And so this is the first time that that particular decision was given life, in that a court sat on Saturday to deal with matters that related to the liberty of individuals charged with the highest crime that could be committed in the country. And so they were arrested on Friday, and on Saturday, a court was available, and 3 judges who will be hearing the matter in panel to hear the issues related to bail as well.
Joseph Akable, thank you for the background and for telling us what transpired in court just on Saturday. Joseph Akable is our court correspondent. We'll let him go. Hamdia Mohammed is a lawyer. And I want to start on the back of what Joseph has said with you, Hamdia, from treason felony to high treason. How do you interpret the change in the charges? If you'd kindly unmute so we can hear you.
All right, I have done that.
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Well, I think, well, we have to start first and foremost from the definition of treason felony and high treason. So with treason felony, it's where a person is found guilty of treason felony, where a person endeavors to procure by unlawful means alteration of government laws or policies, or a person prepares by unlawful means to usurp the executive powers of the Republic. But then with high treason, it's where a person by himself or with others overthrows the Constitution or attempts to do same by unlawful or violent means. Now, the difference in the wording is really the use of the word violence and the use of the word Constitution in the high treason, where that's not seen in the definition of treason felony. Now, we don't really have too many decided cases on treason, so we haven't exactly, the courts have not had the opportunity to distinguish properly between treason felony and high treason, the definitions, that is. But then I would say the main difference is the punishment. So with treason felony, it's a first degree felony. And a first degree felony, the punishment is, the maximum sentence is life imprisonment. So either life imprisonment or less. But with high treason, the difference, the punishment is death. It's a capital offense, so the only prescribed punishment is death. But really and truly, like I already said, the definitions are very similar. So it's really the punishment that is the difference. But then with life imprisonment, if you're getting life imprisonment for treason felony, you get to, mingle with other prisoners. You get to, you just live as a normal prisoner. But then with high treason, because the punishment is death penalty, and as we all know, Ghana has not executed anyone since 1993. So it's unlikely that that's going to start now. So if an accused person is found guilty of high treason, it's unlikely that the person would be executed. So in practice, what happens is that the person is sent to prison, but then he would serve a life sentence. But then it's a prison within a prison, because when you are on a death row, you are in solitary confinement. You are basically in condemned cells. And what happens is you don't have any or little interaction with other people. And I think this is very detrimental to the mental health of people who would be, who are in the death row, because human beings, we are social animals and we thrive on interacting with other humans. So then if you are put on the death row, what this means is that your mental health will be affected. It's really torture, really. The punishment of death.
Okay. So I see that you're going into the consequence of a punishment like that. We'll come and continue, but let me just bring Albert into the conversation. This is a capital offense that carries a punishment of death. Is the West African Network for Peace building surprised at the turn of event in terms of the charges? Hello, Mr. Yayan, if you can unmute.
I think that we might not be so surprised at the turn of events based on the fact that the security would have its own intelligence that they would have gathered right from the beginning when they noted that certain activities were taking place, certain conversations were taking place, and which, of course, if you read the news, they monitored for over a period and eventually preferred certain charges based on the information they have picked and their own analysis. And now, probably based on further analysis, and investigations, they would have probably come up with these charges. To the extent of it as high treason is where one may be asking certain questions, whether in terms of the level of preparedness, and the context within which these people tended to operate, it would have resulted in an issue where it can be a high treason charge. Be that as it may, the preference of the charges might be based on the analysis of the security intelligence and also the advice from the Attorney General that will enable them to say, okay, this is something that we can prefer such a charge, but the context, is what we would want to look at. What is the network that these people probably built over time? What is the strategy that, in terms of the security arrangement within the state and at the leadership, that can destabilize the state? Is it possible that someone would be able to destabilize the state, and take over leadership? So there are a lot of questions to be asked, and if you observe the coup d'etats we have had in the country, were based on certain context, principles of the individuals involved, and also the gaps that have been, available at the time, and very often it would be internal. And so that's why I'm talking about the networks. What is the network that probably they have established that, but be that as it may, it is based on information that can now give them reason as to whether they should bear charges as high treason.
Hamdia, you've been following this issue closely, so I've got to ask you the same question. Are you surprised about this Nolly protocol? Now the AG is not interested in prosecuting what it first started, but it's gone on to fresh charges with this high treason charge slap now. Are you surprised?
Again, like I indicated, sorry. Okay.
No, Albert, sorry. I was asking Hamdia for a reaction as well.
Sorry.
It's entirely in the hands of the Attorney General to decide which charges it wants to, bring against the accused persons. But then I think it was the manner in which it was done that was quite a surprise because, the lawyers were essentially told that we had a meeting with the former BNI, now NIB, that we had a meeting with the DPP and we should come along with our clients. So then when we went, we were told that the charge had been substituted, well, not substituted, since the Felony protocol was entered, that the Attorney General was no longer interested in prosecuting the case, but then a fresh action had been brought against the accused persons, and then they were rearrested I think that since we are growing as a nation, our laws should also be, seen to be growing with us. So I think alternatively, what should have been done, it's my opinion, what should have been done is that the Attorney General should have probably waited till 4th May, which is and then that it had entered. And so then the courts would then in turn discharge the jury and discharge the accused persons. And then when they leave the court premises, they can be rearrested and charged. Because you can imagine, like, as a judge, the case is before you, and you would just read in the newspaper that an early prescription had been entered. You are not formally informed. The jury is not formally informed. Or, you've seen it in the newspapers, you've seen it on TV that the case is no longer before you. I think it's more, it would be more respectable to the jury if they are formally informed of new proceedings being brought or entry of null prosequi.
And I must also ask, do you know if the accused persons who were granted bail were able to meet the bail conditions?
They were granted bail. I am not properly informed as to whether or not they've been in conditions, but out, as time goes on.
Albert, do you also have concerns in terms of the manner in which this is being prosecuted, how the fresh charges were slapped and the earlier one was discontinued, just as Hamdia outlines? Kindly unmute, sir.
Yeah, so this was still in court. People, the general public was following the dynamics and waiting for the processes to continue. Like I indicated, probably it's based on new investigation, information based on the continuous investigation that they have done. And if I heard the first speaker well, he indicated that these went to the evidences, went to, what do you call it, for forensic further studies or analysis, and the reports or information has been received. So probably more information has been gotten based on the analysis, and the thinking now could be, okay, should we not discontinue this process as we initially preferred, and then come up with new charges, review the documents so that we can go to a different jurisdiction and probably prosecute. It may be depending on the comfort zone and the realities, the legalities and all that can be taken into consideration, that they will say, okay, let's go to this court and prefer these charges based on the further information that we've had. But it can be surprising to the general public and analysts that, the turn of events would be letting people to ask several questions. What really is on the ground? What really is the state or the intelligence capo know that we don't know? And of course, it's generally so that they will censor information to the public and then keep what they want to keep for also security reasons. But I think that it looks interesting at the moment that new charges have been preferred, that they are going to a different court, and to the extent of the charge, again, as I indicated, high treason, there are a lot more questions to be asked.
I just want to bring a bit of background in terms of these persons who are being accused. Dr. Frederick McPam is a medical doctor and the director of the Citadel Hospital located at Agordzo. Also, Donya Kafui is the second accused person. He's a blacksmith. The third accused person, Bright Alan Deborah, is a fleet manager here in Accra. Johannes Zikpe is the fourth accused person. He's a civilian employee of the Ghana Armed Forces. Senior military officer Colonel Samuel Kojo Gamali is named as the fifth accused person. The sixth is WO 2 Esther San Dekwani. The seventh is CPL Seidu Abubakar, Lak Ali Solomon, and eighth Sylvester Akanpewon. Accused persons are soldiers of the Ghana Armed Forces, while the 10th accused person, ACP Benjamin Agordzo, is a senior police officer. I just wanted to ask, some of these persons are serving personnel in the army, and then we've got this police officer, you know, huge police officer also at the center of this. Albert, I'd like you to take it. What does this say, really? I know that, you know, they have not been found guilty of any offense or the offense that they're being accused of yet, but just the fact that they are in the mix. Does this send any signal?
Of course. Various individuals, based on their capacities, would play different roles, probably aiming at a goal or an objective. And so probably if you look at the suspects, they are drawn from various representations and probably to play complementary roles if that is the case. And you also look within the representations they are coming from, and probably you ask questions. What is the general situation within those representations in terms of whether they are happy or not about happenings within the security arrangements within states, you know. But I think that if you look at the current arrangement, anyone that understands security arrangements within leadership, you know, around leadership, you would say that the current arrangement is one that, you know, to be able to overcome, you would need a certain level of capacity to do so. If you look at equipment, if you look at, you know, the tools, the logistics that are being used, you know, it may only now depend on a lack of loyalty and principle for an infiltration. So I think that, well, looking at the representations they are drawn, they may be playing complementary roles or intended to play complementary roles, and probably so the arrangement that have been established or determined at the moment.
Let me get a word on that from you, Hamdia. Kindly unmute.
Okay, all right. Well, because the case is still in court, we can't exactly go into the merits, what could have happened or what the information the prosecution has currently, what they're going to use as evidence in proving that these accused persons are actually guilty of the crime or not. So, well, I would say that we are really just going to have to wait to see what the prosecution has in store for us.
But, you know, in terms of the active personnel who are being accused of these charges, what usually happens? Obviously, they won't be going to work, but do we know if they're paid, do they receive their salaries and allowances and all of those things whilst they still battle this issue in courts?
Well, I would think, well, the last time I found out about this, but this was during the treason felony trial. At least I know that the police person who is Dr. Agordzo was getting his salary slashed, but then I don't know if there's any active measures that have been taken to by the police force to stop him from coming to work per se. But then he has not been pronounced guilty, so then he still has, you know, the right to work because there's a presumption of innocence until you are proven guilty. So you can be suspended, but then you can't be, your right to work cannot be, you know, curtailed. So for now, they have a right to continue working.
Just finally on this, how long the first charge travel? And the intention is, how long do you think this one will travel before we get to the end of it?
Well, you can't exactly tell, like one can't exactly tell how long this could take because with the treason felony, they were arrested in November 2019. I think around November 2019, and the trial was set to start on 4th May. So all that has been happening so far have just been like application for bail and preliminary proceedings. But the actual trial was supposed to start on 4th May, where the first the first witness was supposed to have started giving their tests, their evidence, So since from 2019, November 2019 to 4th May, so that's been about a year and a half before the actual trial starts. But in court on Saturday, it was the judges stated that they wanted a quick trial. So let's see how quick that the trial will travel. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but we can't tell the exact length of time the trial will take.
Sure. Albert, I guess we all have to sit tight and wait and follow closely and see the evidence that will be brought up and how this case will be fought in court.
Exactly, because like I indicated, you have people from representations who probably have different capacities, but there has not been any establishment. And so what you will be doing is scratching the surface, of any conversation. Until the case travels deep, then the evidences can now begin to unfold. As indicated, the security intelligence might have information that they have not put onto the public domain. And so all of us are based on just broad or global analysis that we probably will be doing now. Yeah.
All right. Well, I thank you for your time this morning. Hopefully we can speak again sometime in the future. Thanks, Albert. Thanks, Hamdi, as well, for your time. All right, and that's our conversation on this capital offense charge slapped on some 10 persons, including a top police officer and a military officer as well. We will be keeping you updated as and when the court sits on this matter.